Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast that's been dedicated to bringing you the highs and lows of crushes, but we're shaking things up to crush on a whole decade. Yep, we're talking all things 90s, and we're bringing back some familiar faces. Well, voices, like our guest today, Amanda Martini, a drag artist extraordinaire who's here to talk about all things 90s, and who you heard before talking about a beastly random crush from a Disney classic. But today, we're going to talk about her busy schedule and the year that made everyone want to jump, 1992. Amanda, how have you been?
I have been great. This past year has been super crazy. I've started a lot of regular in-person gigs, which has been incredible. I've gotten to be on a bunch of different nerdy podcasts. Shit really hit the fan during Pride season. Aside from getting started at a brand new venue called DC Vegan here in Washington, D.C., doing a lot of Pride gigs because they're right on DuPont Circle, which is like the big gay mecca of D.C. But I also really got thrown into I'm not going to say national, but almost national scene of Drag Story Hour and all of the nonsense that's gone on with that, which it's been exciting, it's been exhausting, it's been sad, it's been amazing. But yeah, what a year.
You know, those Drag Story Hours, it's like, how many of you are out there reading to the youth? Come on, somebody's got to do it. And who wouldn't want a drag performer there? I'd be so excited as a kid.
And the thing is that the families and parents who are there in good faith are so incredible and so lovely. But I mean, there are those people, and they definitely mean to do us harm. So,
well, they are trash, and they are not welcomed in the Crushgasm realm. So
that is true.
Nobody has crushes on those type of people. So before we start, like you said, you're always booked and blessed. From brunches, bingo, you're reading to the youth. Can you tell people where they can find you online? And I'm going to make you repeat that later, but just, heads up.
Sure. So you can find me across all social media at Amanda Martini, DMANDA That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Most importantly, Cash App and Venmo. You can keep up with all of the things that I'm doing. In February 2023, I'll have just gotten back from a trip to Utah, where I will have done my first gig in Utah, which is kind of awesome, as well as meeting with my old college, Utah State University, meeting with their Queer Student Alliance. Also, because I'm now a guest speaker. Also, I'll be attending Farpoint Convention, which is my big convention that I go to every year just outside of Baltimore, and doing a drag show there. So that will have happened, and hopefully I will, fingers crossed, will be continuing doing my gigs at DC Vegan called Amanda Nightcap, where we mix drag with readings of erotic fiction.
Oh, I think I've been to that area. I don't go to DC too often, just when we need to stock up on some herbal refreshments.
Yes.
But I think we walked around there recently. It was such a cute neighborhood.
It's just such a cute venue. So even if you're not vegan or vegetarian, I am not either of those things, but the food is still really good. And all of the cocktails are made fresh. So if you're looking for a quick drink on the go, it's not really the vibe for that. I mean, of course you can stop in and, get whatever, but they're all handcrafted cocktails. So it's a place to come and just chill for the evening. It's a very it's just a super chill atmosphere.
I look forward to hopefully going out and seeing you one day, when the weather is better, and I'm so scared of deers, and it's deer season. Like, I'm so scared to hit a deer. Like, it's my biggest fear since moving to the East Coast.
I mean, as someone who grew up in a neighborhood called Deer Park, I feel that.
It's like, I love Bambi, but Jesus Christ. Like, I was terrified. So let's kick this off with what you were doing and where you were in 1992. Was it Deer Park?
I was in Deer Park. So I was 10 years old, and I was a little queer child just struggling to be trying to be myself, but also still trying to conform to things. But yeah, I grew up in a little small town, which I still live in, outside of Washington, D.C. in Southern Maryland. And so I would have been in, fourth grade when in 1992, which comes, again, for those of you listening, it's important to remember that I was 10 years old when I go talking about some of the things that were influential in my childhood.
I mean, it's okay. I talk about Dirty Dancing, but I was 5 when I started watching that. And I just made my guy watch it for the first time ever. And he was like, this is highly sexual.
It is highly sexual. It took me until I was at least 18 to understand that Penny had an abortion.
Oh, same. Also, did you catch that, like, the person that ran the resort was kind of pimping out those, like, the men there?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Did not catch that until, like, a week or 2 ago when I watched it with him. I was like, I don't remember this brothel part of it.
Yeah, he most definitely did. And the thing is that if you're getting that vibe about him and, like, the young men, just imagine what he was doing to the women who worked there.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like he was just the men. He was like, you're going to Harvard next year. You gotta make some extra bucks. Sleep with that woman. Like, what?
Just wild. Just wild.
The plot, I was like, it's a classic. He's like, this is horrible. I was like, whatever. So the past couple of years, like 1990, 1991, we've covered, it has felt like a little 80s adjacent. Like, we still had a little overflow, but in terms of pop culture, 1992 for me seemed to be the year that started to feel like the magic that is the 90s. For you, you said the most significant pop culture thing of 1992 was Madonna's album Erotica. Why is that?
So for me, Erotica was such a huge, like, thing for me. So the first album I ever received as a gift was Madonna's Immaculate Collection, which I would have gotten, like, probably the summer before that. So it was the summer that my grandmother passed away in Utah, and my mother, because there was four of us kids, my mother bought all of us a Walkman and a tape, because our giant van that we used to use to travel across the country had the air conditioning had broke, which means that we all had to pile into my dad's Honda Accord and drive across the country. So my grandmother had just had a stroke, so my mom was like, I don't want to hear any of you kids as we're driving across the country.
Okay.
I don't want to hear complaining about, like, what music we're listening to. So everyone's getting a tape. Everyone's getting a Walkman. Be quiet. So I got Madonna's Immaculate Collection. And, like, that, again, was so influential to me. So the first album that I got of Madonna's after that was Erotica, which was her next release in 1992. And again, I was 10 years old, and I knew that Madonna was releasing an album. I knew really nothing about, like, what what it was about, like, what was going on. But I remember there also being a hubbub about her releasing her sex book as well that year, which I now do own an Italian copy of. Is it Italian or French? I should look at it again. But I had gotten on eBay a few years ago. But and I remember there being, like, a hubbub and people being like, "Oh, Madonna is gross," and how dare she do this stuff? And I was just listening to this album, the title track being Erotica, being like, I just felt like this music is so good. It was just like, it was just a complete vibe. I remember the song Deeper and Deeper was a song that we did dance warm-ups to in my dance class that I was in. And I was like, see, this is still popular music And also I remember there's another song on there called Thief of Hearts, which was like the first time I heard like swearing in a song, and I felt so adult listening to this song, because the whole song starts there going bitch, and I was like, oh, I was like, yes, I was just living my life, and like me listening on my Walkman, like in our giant van, because I grew up with 3 brothers. We drove all over because my brothers played travel soccer, or we're just this family, and we all got things to do, so we were just always in the car. And me just like lip syncing for my life to Madonna's Erotica was like such a thing. There's also so come to find out that Thief of Hearts was actually written about Robin Wright, because that was at the moment that Robin Wright and Sean Penn got together. So Madonna was like, fuck you, bitch. And
the OG Olivia Rodrigo over there.
Yes. And there also Bad Girl was on there, just talking about like addiction and just being like bad. And again, I was 10 years old being like, I am this bad bitch. I remember there was one time I was listening to that album when we were going to my parents' church to like help clean up, and me listening to this album in the church building, like cleaning church. I was like, I feel powerful. Like, I just feel like this is it. But and that album also had Justify My Love, which was like another huge controversial. Oh no, wait, no, it wasn't. It was Justify My Love was on
Bedtime Stories.
That's when I heard that. But like, so there was just so much controversy around it, and I kind of just like felt like, oh, I'm a part of like this bigger conversation about like free speech and women being able to express themselves. And again, I'm just this little like blonde queer child in the middle of suburbia, just being like, yes, free speech. Women's bodies are, women are allowed to have their own bodies and make their own choices. And
you're going to march after that.
Girl, I was a lot, but I also remember when I got that album, my brother, one of my older brothers was like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, they're 10 years old. My mom was like, they don't know what it means. It's just music.
I feel like that was the thing, though, in the 90s. It was as long as you were quiet with whatever you liked, your parents just didn't care what it was. It was like, whether it was Madonna or South Park, they're like, as long as they're not bothering me, I don't care.
Right. And like, I mean, that's how I kind of feel like parents are now, with like, as long as your kid's quiet on their pad, like, whatever, it's kind of like the start of that kind of judgment. Because also, like, both of my parents at that time worked. So it was like, we just kind of like fended for ourselves. And when we were all traveling together again after that, like long road trip, it was like, just bring your headphones wherever you're going, because you don't, so, the 90s was like early 92 or 92 was also like a lot of like when the grunge movement started, I think. And so like that, a lot of that music I just did not care for. I was like, give me Madonna, give me Whitney, give me Janet. And none of my brothers were into that stuff. So like and I'm also number 3 out of 4. So like I didn't get a say in like what we listened to as a family. I mean, not to mention that obviously my parents also had a lot to, say about like what music was being played. So like I like lived in my earphones and just like, had my own thing. And again, as long as I was just lip syncing and not singing along, it was all good.
I mean, you gotta love that. I mean, God, I miss having my little CD player, my little Walkman. I think Mariah Carey was my first Walkman tape back in 3rd grade, a few years later. So before we dive into the music and TV and movies of 1992, I do want to get into a little running segment that I've come up with here, and that's about People's Sexiest Man and the most beautiful pics for those covers, which one of them in 1992 was a little bit questionable, and you can guess which one. So they were Nick Nolte and Jodie Foster. So which one do you think was the sexiest?
Well, Jodie Foster, first of all, because this was like right on the heels of her winning the Oscar, right?
Yeah.
For Silence of the Lambs. So, first of all, Jodie Foster is amazing. I mean, she strikes me as a little bit of like an odd person, but I mean, anyone who like grows up as like, I guess like a sexual being as a child in Hollywood, and then is like and then doesn't have any sort of like, doesn't play a lot of roles that are very sexual in nature, I guess. I should say, like as they got older, like they sort of like veered off of like that sex pot thing, and she became like, and she's a very like serious actress. I still say Jodie Foster is hot. I loved her in Silence of the Lambs.
And Nick Nolte, did he deserve People's Sexiest Man?
He got that because was it Prince of Tides that had just come out, or was it what was it of his that like came out that like made him the sexiest?
I mean, I think his agents just pushed him, because all I can think of, all that is seared into my mind, is that mugshot of his from years down the line. Right. That's like
I mean, just looking at like the big movies of 1992, I don't see him in any of this. Like, he's not in any of them. So I can only imagine that something in 1991 must have been
or 93 to like be like, oh well, because it always comes out around Thanksgiving, so maybe we'll say he's sexy now, so in January, February you'll go see his movie.
Right. Silence of the Lambs, like I'm just like, I just don't see anything. Oh, he just won the Oscar for Prince of Tides. It was Prince of Tides.
Well, questionable in 92.
And the thing is, like, as a big Barbra Streisand fan, I've seen Prince of Tides. Nick Nolte was not like super hot in that movie. I mean, the movie to me isn't even like that romantic. It's all about like trauma and him discovering his trauma or whatever. So it's like I don't get it. I mean, I'm never here to yuck someone's yum. Like, someone else, I'm sure, felt that. And I also feel like it wasn't so much that he was hot. He was just like hot in the public eye at the moment after winning an Oscar.
He was the it guy.
Yeah, he was just it, and like sort of riding high on his career at the moment.
That's how Blake Shelton got it in recent years.
100%.
No, he's no Chris Hemsworth. So you said, speaking of trauma, the grunge movement did start in that around that time, and Nirvana was huge. But you didn't have a grunge phase. You just weren't feeling that music.
So I would say style-wise, because again, being a young queer child in a small town, you definitely sort of like assimilate. And also being a middle child, you're still getting a lot of like hand-me-downs, and so you're just kind of like wearing whatever. So I would say style-wise, I was slightly grunge, but like musically, no. Like aside from Smells Like Teen Spirit, I literally probably couldn't name you another Nirvana song.
I mean, that's the one to know. Like, if you're at a trivia night, it's gonna be that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, there's the kids these days who like wear the Nirvana shirts, and all of the, you know, older millennials are like, unless you can name me 4 songs by Nirvana. I'm like, I can't either.
Yeah. I had a Smashing Pumpkins shirt in high school, but I only got it. I didn't know it was a band shirt. I only got it because I liked the design. So I was like, right. A little poser.
So again, my brothers were all kind of into that music. So like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all of that stuff. I didn't really get into sort of rock music until a little bit later. And again, it was mostly due to like my brothers having me listen to stuff. Like I got kind of into like Eve 6, 311. What's another like late 90s? I'm not a perfect person.
Simple Plan?
No, that.
Hoobastank.
Hoobastank. So like I kind of got into those as like the later 90s happened. But also around this time is when like we hung out with my cousins a lot because we were going to Utah a lot. And I also got into sort of like classic rock. So like, and my oldest brother was very into like Led Zeppelin, Grateful Dead, that sort of stuff. And my dad has always been an Allman Brothers band, Creedence Clearwater Revival. So like that kind of music was like more like my rock music, and just grunge just didn't appeal to me. To me, they just looked like dirty teenagers who were just sad. And even though I was a dirty teenager who was sad, for whatever reason, like I wanted the fantasy of pop music.
I get that. And as great as, I mean, we can't deny it, Nirvana was great. They were influential, but they didn't make enough waves on the big charts for me. But they weren't like Boyz II Men. Do you remember like the hold Boyz II Men had on the world in the 90s?
I mean, girl, when I tell you, so as someone who mostly has female artists, like that's like my big catalog, the fact that I still owned Boyz II Men, Babyface, and who was another one that it doesn't matter, but like literally I now watch like a 90s music video station that I just like have on like while I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you the Babyface or Boyz II Men comes on, I'm like, oh, come on, middle school jams. Like that, like such good stuff.
And like those videos, they're so expressive. Do you think like a lot of maybe drag artists kind of look to those classic R&B artists from the 90s to get that emotion in their lip sync performances?
I mean, I would. So again, as someone who is older and like and performed, I would say that because we were those kids that, you know, mom and dad just gave us the headphones, and so we were just like lip syncing to our room. I 100%, absolutely. So I just recently won a drag competition here in DC. It's a like every month there's a little one, and then in March there's going to be a big pageant. It's called Slay Them. So I was the December winner, and so the big pageant is going to be in March. It's at Red Bear Brewing. And the big, like the top 3 lip sync song was Celine Dion's It's All Coming Back to Me Now. Okay. And like these 19-year-olds that I was competing against, and again, they're all very lovely, great performers. But they were like, oh yeah, I don't really know this song. Like, oh my gosh, I've been like working really hard trying to learn the song. And I'm like, y'all, I've literally been singing this song since I was in like 6th grade.
Right.
Like, I mean, I don't know exactly when that song came out, but like it came out in the mid 90s, and I'm like, I was firmly, Celine Dion also had a firm chokehold on me in the 90s. So like, and also like growing up with, you know, Madonna and Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, like that's how I learned to lip sync. Like that's how I learned to sing. So it's like those kind of like overly expressive and also like, again, Babyface, Boyz II Men, TLC, you know, these overly expressive artists, like that's like my wheelhouse. Like I love that shit.
Yeah, like VH1, I had that before MTV for some reason, and just Celine Dion, Sheryl Crow, I loved all that like yes. Music that like 30-year-old moms or 40-year-old moms probably liked in the 90s was my jam. Like I love Matchbox 20. Like Rob Thomas, love you. And I don't think we could talk about music from this year without mentioning what I think is one of the top 10 songs that kind of define the decade, and that is Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back. And it's ridiculous and it's wonderful, and really I think it's the first time that we did get some love for the backside during a time when it was just like white women, blonde, rail thin. But it did take some time for the world to kind of catch up to this song, because there's a debate on who brought the appreciation to the ample backside. Do you think it was Destiny's Child Bootylicious, or J-Lo in that infamous dress, or the curse that is the Kardashians?
Well, so
this is real journalism here, people.
So definitely, like, I feel like Sir Mix-a-Lot was like doing it, but also doing it with like tongue firmly planted in cheek, knowing that it needed to be funny in order for people to like get it. and sort of like get into the idea. I mean, like listening to it now, first of all, he's making fun of the white girls making fun of the black girls in that song. Like that's definitely what he's doing. But at the same time, it's also like listening to it now, it's like, oh, this is a little bit of a problem. But again, 1992, we're listening to it now, 30 years later. But anyway, to answer your direct question, your very researched and thorough question, I mean, I would honestly have to say that J-Lo was kind of the infamous green dress, because also like in that late 90s huge Latin explosion that happened.
Latin
I feel like
invasion.
her doing that at that exact time was really like what I think, in my opinion, cemented it.
Right. And you didn't mention them, but I mentioned them, the Kardashians, but the production company that kind of forced the world to keep up with that family was actually behind The Real World, which dropped its first season in 1992, which at the time, the show was pretty groundbreaking and wild to watch. And a few years later, we did meet Pedro, who was a gay Hispanic man with AIDS, and he had this platform to tell his story. So that was a grand moment for the show, but overall, the show set the stage for the hot mess express that is reality TV.
100%. So I remember watching that first season when I was little, and having the first like out person that I think I'd ever seen on television that season. And also I believe her name was Heather, as the black woman who was also trying to be a hip hop artist. That show was so real, and like people having like real fights, but also like because they knew that they had to live together, like actually talking through their stuff was really wild. But yeah, I distinctly remember watching The Real World, and then I got obsessed with it. By the time so like I definitely watched San Francisco with Pedro, but by the time like the season in Miami hit, like I was firmly into it. Cynthia from Miami, still like my number one favorite Real World person ever. Yeah, love The Real World.
I didn't watch too much. I was more of like a Road Rules kind of kid, but I do remember watching, I think it was Trishelle in Vegas was really memorable. There was the chick from Walla Walla, Washington on one season who would always mention she was from Walla Walla, Washington, like we cared. And of course there's the Hawaii and the San Diegos, of course.
Yeah, so like Hawaii was when there was like the firm shift to like, because that was like the 1999-2000 season, like there was like a firm shift to, we actually need to find crazy people to be in our houses, and people that will cause a problem. And then by the time they got to Las Vegas with Trishelle, then it was about nothing but let's find the hottest, messiest people that we can find, that we know are going to have sex in this house and be messy. And then they decided to shift and take it to the Jersey Shore, and again, history is
hot mess express of reality TV. But did you know there was actually a season planned before New York? They actually refer to it as season 0, and it cast somebody named Tracy Grandstaff. And did you know who she went on to be?
No.
The voice of Daria.
Really?
Yeah. Fun fact for everybody. I was like, because everyone thinks, of course, what's her name?
Janine Garofalo.
Yeah, everyone thinks that's Daria, but it was Tracy Grandstaff who brought our icon to life. So another show that premiered that year, which I'd also say is groundbreaking in its own way, was Melrose Place. I was far too young to have watched it, but I totally did. And this was sort of like Fox's way of cashing in on that success of 90210, but making it the drama older. And I like 90210, but I definitely love Melrose Place more. What one did you favor either?
So people knew, again, this is how old I am. People knew in high school that you did not call me on Monday or Wednesday nights because it was Melrose Place and 90210. I love Melrose Place. That show it's like once it found its like niche of like, oh no, just turn the batshit crazy up. It was what like Marcia Cross's character was just insane. One of my absolute favorite moments that I remember watching live on television was right after, what was her name? The other redhead, was it Sydney?
I believe so. Yes.
She gets married to like the hot model guy, and they walk out after getting married, and someone runs her over. It was like, this is wild. And I also remember the season at the very end when Marcia Cross's character blows up Melrose Place and you didn't know who lived or died.
I mean,
wild, groundbreaking television.
So good. And they don't make it like that anymore. They don't. I mean, I loved Heather Locklear's character, Amanda Woodward. I went on to love Brian Kinney and Queer as Folk later in life, and I was like, should I go into marketing? Because they were both in that field, and I think that's what I meant to do. I didn't, but I just thought because two of my favorite characters. But did you watch the reboot in 2009 that lasted, sadly, only one season?
So I did not, but I did watch LA Complex, which was a very similar style show. That was a Canadian show, but set in LA, starring one of the actresses from Degrassi and
Manny.
Yeah, and Jewel. Well, I can't remember her last name, from Firefly.
Oh, okay. From Flash Forward.
That show was also wild. So again, Manny from Degrassi, like one of her first story arcs is that she has to go get a plan B before she goes to an audition, and the plan B makes her sick at the audition.
Manny. I think for the Degrassi fandom, we said that show was really just Manny's continuation because she wanted to be an actress. Yeah,
it kind of was. But I love that show. I was so sad when it ended. There was also like a crazy... I believe he was a hip hop artist who was a closet homosexual, and eventually like found love with his agent, and it was wild. It was wild.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, not at all in the 90s. But
90s, it kind of gave you that 90s feel though. Plan B.
Well, because it was definitely trying to go for that Melrose Place. It was like everyone living in an LA apartment complex. Everyone having like their own stories and how like sometimes they'd intersect. And again, it was also like very like adult problems, which was very Melrose Place.
Yeah, but it sadly ended. But I just don't want to talk about the shows that like started. I do want to talk about one that ended, and that was Golden Girls. It ended in 1992. That series finale still can make me cry today. And I know there's all this like Friends versus Living Single online, but really those two to me just ripped off Golden Girls. But nevertheless, why and how do you think Golden Girls, a show about 4 senior citizens, has been able to sustain itself in pop culture this long?
I think the reason is because, well, first it plays on archetype characters, which as Living Single, Friends, Sex and the City, really any show where there's like, a group of friends. And I also feel like it was because that show treated them like people, not as just these old women. Because I mean, like for a lot of those women, that was still like in the middle of their careers. It wasn't like it was even what a show it should have been towards the end of their career, because they were playing like these quote old women. Like that's firmly in the middle of all of their careers.
I think that like Blanche was supposed to be like they were only supposed to be like in their 50s, 60s, so they weren't like that old.
Right. But a show about like these women in the golden years of their life or whatever, and it's like they still had sex, they still went on dates, but because they were older ladies, they had ex-husbands, they had grown children, and I feel like because the writers were also like, we need to, and I think a little bit of it is B. Arthur because of her like, I guess, long story short, like politics, because of like her like sort of not love, but like interest in like talking about like what was really going on in the world. I mean, like with Maud, you know, there was the abortion episode and you know all of that. I feel like she just was like, no, we need to talk about like what's happening. We need to like not just make this show like all this fluff, even though there was definitely some fluff. I mean, you can't forget the cat costumes or the turkey costumes or the what other costumes that they made them wear, like whatever weird
the
dance
Chicken Little.
Yes, but I think like that's why that show resonates, and also because of our generation of growing up sort of in front of the TV, you know, the TV being the babysitter. Like that show is just something that like we watched, and then you know the invent of like syndication and reruns where it's like, oh, this is like my comfort show that I get to watch when I come home from school, or you know that I watch before dinner, or you know that kind of stuff. I mean, like a lot of those shows from the 90s to me are like that. It's like it's just these comfort things because it's what I did when I needed to have something to comfort me.
Makes sense. And they say the reason we watch shows, like you said, over and over again is because it's familiar and that is comforting. So I get that. But also, B. Arthur is a boss bitch, so that is why.
One of my favorite stories of B. Arthur is I am a huge fan of Rufus Wainwright, who is a recording artist. And he has this amazing song called California, in which he talks about going to California, yada, 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 and how his grandma, and how he wanted to meet his new grandma, B. Arthur. Because when he was growing up, he would watch the Golden Girls with his grandmother, and that was the sort of like bonding thing they have. So then when his grandmother passed, B. Arthur became his new grandmother. So at one moment, Rufus Wainwright did this AIDS charity event hosted by B. Arthur. And they're backstage together, and Rufus Wainwright just like goes into all this stuff, like, oh my gosh, B. Arthur, like I have to tell you the story, and blah blah blah, which is a story I'm sure B. Arthur has heard a million times from a million fans. And she has sort of like got up from her makeup chair and just went, honey, I am not your fucking grandmother.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, yes, absolutely, like 100% B. Arthur. I live it. I love it. It's great.
Oh my god, B. I'm more of a boss bitch than I thought.
Oh yeah. The woman drove trucks in World War II.
Yeah, I always see that photo and I'm like, Jesus. You also it's like it puts time in a perspective that is like a little confusing.
Right.
Like I said, I couldn't talk to you in 1992 without bringing up what is often considered one of the best animated series ever, and that is X-Men. I mean, from the theme song to the way the show, I feel, didn't talk down to its audience. It was on Saturday morning, but it did feel pretty grown. Like it told stories that you could follow and that weren't silly. Were you like tuned in Saturday mornings? Because you were the perfect age for this.
Well, first of all, as someone who already was in love with the X-Men before the show came out, and also, so I started reading comics around like 89, 90-ish, I think. Like only like 91, but it just seemed like such a long time. I was already into the X-Men, so when I found out they were doing a cartoon, I was like, you mean the comics that I'm already in love with? Is this cartoon made specifically for me? For me specifically? When I tell you every Saturday, me and my brothers would watch and record every episode. And so that way we had it on tape, so that way we could watch it again and again and again. And I, to this day, still have probably maybe just the first season, but like the first season completely memorized. I love the show so much. For the people who are hopefully that I am bringing to your podcast listen already know that I'm such a huge X-Men fan. I was so in love with the show, and I loved the fact that even though it was, quote, for kids, it still dealt with the issues that the X-Men dealt with, and it was a fairly faithful adaptation of the source material. They really brought these characters as we grew up seeing them to the screen with very little changes to their backstory or their personalities. And it was just such a great show. And like you said, it didn't really dumb down any of the stuff. It still talked about, how mutants were being persecuted, and it talked about Magneto's family being killed in a war. They never brought up the Holocaust, but being killed in a war, and just such a good show. It is such my only sort of like thing that I dislike about the show is that because it had such a stronghold on a whole generation, a lot of fans, of my contemporaries can't seem to like let that era go and move on from it. So in the comic books, there's always like this regression, like to the status quo of the 90s. And I'm just like, can we not, like, these people now have 30 plus years of continuity in between then, and you guys just want to continue to regress them to the 90s. And it does get frustrating as a fan and someone who's been a fan of like just the progression that the X-Men have made over the last 3 decades. Because even like, so there's going to be a revival. It's going to be called X-Men 97. That's going to be coming to Disney Plus soon. And the showrunner of that show, I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, but we are... Actually, I don't know if we're mutuals. I don't know if he follows me back, but I do follow him on social media. He's friends with some of like my friends just because, X-Men Twitter, like we all know each other. And even he has like some really crazy takes that are firmly planted in the 90s. And I'm like... It's one of those things where he's like, tell me you haven't read comics in the last 30 years without telling me you haven't read comics in the last 30 years. And like, it's fine. I understand that like the show's going to be the show, just like with the MCU and other fans being like, well, this is what I think should happen. It's like, well, girl, it's not going to be what you think should happen. It's going to be whatever, the writers, whatever story they want to tell. Like, it's not going to be what we want. It's going to be what these people want to create. And so anyway, the show is amazing. I love it. I still watch it at least once a year in its entirety.
Oh, wow. So I did get to interview Larry F. Houston, who worked on the show back in the day. And we talked about the show in terms of it appealing to Black kids in particular, because the mutants, they're in a society where like they're the other. And it's also a huge pop culture favorite I've noticed in the LGBTQ community, and I think for many of the same reasons. And sadly, all these years, like you mentioned in the beginning, we're still fighting for those rights and just plain respect in that community. So what do you think Marvel finally letting the X-Men joining their universe is going to do for those kids today that still kind of feel like the other, like to get those X-Men characters in this bigger platform than they already have?
The thing is, they're already being better about, at least in the last few years, they're being somewhat better about the representation that they're bringing into the larger MCU as a whole. Because even, again, as a fan of comic books for a long time, even the comic books sometimes have to be changed or rewritten to fit whatever is going on in the MCU at the moment, which kind of sucks, but, whatever. I get it. It's all about marketing and making money. We do live under a capitalist structure. But I don't know if it will have the exact same impact because they've already sort of gone that way. Because like when the X-Men were introduced as sort of like the stand-in for the other, there really weren't other people to look to. There weren't Black characters. There weren't gay characters. There were barely any female characters. So I don't know. I don't know whether or not the X-Men would have that same sort of feel that they have for people, just because they're. Even
we live
just
in
after
such a more like. I think pop culture's grown since then. That's what you're saying.
Because what marginalized communities will do is they'll latch on to whatever small like glimpse of representation that they see and just sort of like, this is mine. This is ours. We get to have this. No one else gets to have it. This is ours. And we just sort of like latch onto it, which is great. Because, when you don't have anything and like you want to like sort of like put yourself into it, that's, what you do. But it's like we already do have some representation in there. I mean, the MCU is still extremely lacking in LGBTQ plus representation. I mean, like a one-off chance hug or touch or whatever is not actual valid representation, in my opinion. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, I will be interested to see how they bring the X-Men in. I mean, they've already mentioned mutants now twice in the MCU, so we'll see what happens.
Well, time will tell. So it's time to switch gears and talk about the movies. And your first time here, like we said, you talked about Beast from Beauty and the Beast, but that came out the year prior, 91. But 92, wasn't too shabby. We got Aladdin, another very attractive yet problematic man in the Disney realm. Was this a movie you thought was as good as Beauty and the Beast when you first saw it?
So I still loved Aladdin. I think I still like Beauty and the Beast more, but I mean, when Aladdin came out, I was still all about it. I remember I made my entire family go see it. Like that was like I was like, I want to go see this, so you all have to come see it with me. Like I made them come see it. I remember that year for Christmas, like I got all of the Aladdin stuff. I mean, I was still very into it, but yeah, I wouldn't say, I think now I wouldn't say that I liked Aladdin more than Beauty and the Beast. I mean, Little Mermaid is still like my number one.
Same.
But definitely but I would say like those are probably my top three.
Are you excited for the live action Little Mermaid?
I am excited for the live action Little Mermaid. I have yet to like any of the live action. But I feel really good about this one. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I feel good about this one.
I mean, the only one I've really liked, and it's because it's so old and it's just like no real people and is Jungle Book. I thought they did a good job with that, but again, that one's so old and it's not, I'm not attached to that one like I am Beauty and the Beast.
The thing with Jungle Book and even The Lion King, I'm like, this isn't live action. Stop calling it live action.
I mean, The Lion King looked like a nature documentary. I was like, nope. And the Aladdin one, I'll say this forever, looked like a porn parody.
We literally didn't even, when I tried watching it, I didn't even make it to the genie. Like I was already out. I was like, nope, I'm done. I just could. And the thing is, you can usually get me in with like a very attractive man who like wears not a lot of clothes. But I was just not into it. I could not. I even finished Mulan, which I felt was not great, but I couldn't even get into Aladdin. Don't even get me started on the Beauty and the Beast one. I did not like that. I
fell asleep until the end when it got violent. And then I was like, okay. But until then, I didn't like anything about that. But yeah, I'm like you. I am optimistic about The Little Mermaid, and I'm just hoping it's not horrible trash like the rest.
Well, and also like I just hope that it's good. So I will still go support it and see it in the movie theater because I don't want the bad people to win, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I actually have an outfit for it. I'm really excited. I got a sequin purple crop top and green jeans. I'm like,
yes. Like I'm still down for it and like what it potentially could represent for a lot of people. So like I want to go support it, but also if Melissa McCarthy fucks it up, I literally will throw a table.
And yeah, it's cool. Well, hopefully it is better than that one they did like on ABC with like Shaggy and Sebastian.
Yes, that was well, and even like that recent Beauty and the Beast that they just did. I'm like, why are we still trying at this? Can we stop?
I watched a clip of, I got like 5 notes into Shania and was like, nope. And then I did watch her and Josh Groban do the Beauty and the Beast and her shred on the guitars, but that was cool. But other than that, I don't think we need these things.
Like, again, I'm just like, this is worse than stunt casting on Broadway. Like, that's how I'm like the Broadway shows already exist. Like the musical theater shows exist. Just let them be over there. Like this, like hot mess. Oh, anyway.
But anyway, back to 1992. There were like a lot of movies aimed at kids, and they were like killing it because like Home Alone 2 that year managed to rake in enough money to be number 3 for the whole year, and it came out in November.
Right.
And as far as sequels go, do you think it outshined the original one?
I feel like Home Alone 2 is one of the few sequels that didn't outshine, but it was like, oh no, this is still really good. Like it was one of the, it really kind of was before, like, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that because there still are, I'm looking at the top 10 and there's 3 sequels in here. But like, I feel like it was still before everything needed to have a sequel, where like it was like you leave your movie open-ended because like you're expecting there to be a sequel. It was fun, and I feel like it did enough to give it a new story, but still stayed to what it was like, what was great about the original. Like, you know what I mean? Like they I feel like it checked enough boxes that people were like, oh yeah. And also a movie like that around like opening like at Christmas time, when you also know that a lot of families are going to be doing that. For example, the community theater that I work at, every few years we do a Christmas Carol. Why? Because we know that families are going to come and sit and watch it, no matter how many times people have seen it. So it's like it was also like smart marketing.
It was. Macaulay Culkin couldn't get cooler than that in the 90s, especially the early 90s. But another movie that had a lot of sequels, Beethoven. The movie, no CGI, just a simple Saint Bernard dog. It had like 4 or something movies after the original 92.
I think there's like 9 of them.
Do you miss those kind of movies though? Those simple family movies?
So number one, I will be 100% honest. I have never seen a Beethoven movie.
Don't see the first, see the second. It's better.
So number one, I haven't seen any of them. However, I will say, like those kind of movies, like now, I just saw a TikTok about it the other day. Like those kind of movies now are the ones that are like just streaming. Like it's pretty much the equivalent of like your Netflix holiday romantic comedy. Like,
in my notes, though, I said I don't even think a movie like this would land on Freevee.
No, absolutely not. The thing is, like, those kind of movies, however, my mother would still go to, like, Sam's Club or BJ's and still buy, like, any and all of those movies. Like, Dunstan Checks In, Baby's Day Out, anything with, like, an animal in it or whatever. Homeward Bound. Like, all of those movies, like, there were so many of them and, like, these feel-good things. But again, like, and even if they didn't do well at the movie theater, because like, you know, we're looking at the top 10, aside from Home Alone and Aladdin being, you know, a Disney movie, none of these are like real like family movies. Because they were also knew that they would make up whatever it is that they lost at the movie theater in home video release.
Oh yeah, especially Disney. If you had to have those big chunky VHS boxes,
right? And so they knew that, like, I mean, this is, you know, when we were growing up, like my mom would be like, "Oh no, that's a renter." Like when we saw a trailer, it's like, "Oh no, that's a renter." So we'll just wait until it comes out on video, and then we'll go rent it. And like those kind of movies, like that's what it was. It was like, "Oh, we'll just wait till it gets on VHS, and then we'll go get it." However, by 1992, I think we had finally gotten my dad to get a VHS because we were firmly Betamax people.
Oh, wow.
Well into the 90s.
Wow. Even my trailer trash family, we had a VCR pretty early on.
My dad, to this day, refuses to get in on any new technology. We have had to drag him kicking and screaming into any new device. Now, as soon as he gets it, he likes it and sees the benefits of it. But getting him convinced to get it has been a struggle for the past, how old am I? 40 years.
Yeah, parents, especially like parents of that era, are very resistant. My mom is so mad that they didn't offer flip phones anymore. She's like, I hate this. And my dad, who's in his 80s, he still works and he has to clock in and out on an app on a phone.
Oh.
And yeah, HR knows when he's walking in that he messed it up again. He's just like, and he said when he walks into Verizon, they go, "Oh crap, there he is again."
Oh Lord.
He's a problem. But like you mentioned, there were like a good amount of family movies, but a lot of them weren't for families. And I think The Bodyguard was one of them. And
talk about cultural reset.
I mean, for me though, it was more about the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, God, it's perfect. And I'm always like forever sad that I never got to see Whitney Houston live. Is there any late singers that you're kind of pissed about that you'll never see?
I mean, Whitney Houston is definitely one that I'm sad that I never got to see her live. I've been very fortunate enough that a lot of mine, I have been able to see. Like, I would still love to see Barbra Streisand, but I know that she doesn't really do live stuff anymore. I mean, the other thing is, like, there are filmed concerts now, so it's like, you know, you can find anything on YouTube. So, like, it's like I don't really feel that. But Whitney Houston, I'm definitely sad that I never got to see her live.
Yeah, that one. Oh, I've gotten to see a good deal of my favorites. Thankfully, like living in LA, whenever someone would do Jimmy Kimmel, and it might have just been like 2 songs, but you know, if I got to see him, I got to see him. So I got to see Mariah Carey there, which was phenomenal, and Garth Brooks. But I'm also seeing Garth Brooks next summer, and I'm so excited at his Vegas residency.
I was gonna say, if you have not, Janet's about to go on tour. And
I got him. I'm going to Bristol, Virginia. Bristol.
Yes. I saw her, 12 years ago in New Jersey, in Atlantic City. Still one of the best concerts I've ever been to.
Yeah, because I'm not like the biggest fan, but I'm a fan. Like, she's gonna do the hits, so I was like, let's just get these cheap lawns, cheapish lawn seats, and we'll just go have a good time. My husband does like Ludacris, so
great. She's so great. So back to The Bodyguard. So The Bodyguard didn't even come out until like late November, and it still was like such a huge thing and so big. Like, I think that it carried through completely through the year of 1993. It was such a huge deal, and the soundtrack, and I feel like The Bodyguard was one of the movies that really solidified you need to have a soundtrack for your movies, because after that was like, you know, when we got the Batman Forever soundtrack, you know, with Kiss from a Rose, and we got even just that Three Musketeers song, when Bryan Adams just became like the guy who had all of the songs in all of the movies. I mean, he did just have the song from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, in like 91 or whatever, but it was like that's when like these movies from these soundtracks like really became like you need to have the hit. But also, just like looking at the calendar of when movies came out, can you imagine living, again, because I was there, but in 1993, being able to go to the movie theater and see that Aladdin, The Bodyguard, and The Crying Game all opening in the same weekend?
It would be like that's a triple feature, and then definitely cheaper to go.
and just like a week before was Home Alone 2. Like, wild. Like, what a wild selection. And just before that, Malcolm X came out. Like, what?
Movies were movieing in the 92.
Really, and also Bram Stoker's Dracula was still playing in the movie theater at the time. Like, November 1992, just in itself as a month, was crazy. Then a few weeks later, you get the banger of A Few Good Men, followed up in the same weekend, A Muppet Christmas Carol.
Which I think everyone can agree is the best version of A Christmas Carol.
100. Like, there is not a month in 1992 that does not have like... And then in October, there was Reservoir Dogs, which I'm not a Quentin Tarantino fan. I find him to be really trash. But I also cannot deny like his impact on the movie industry, like, in general.
Oh yeah, I mean, my husband's a huge Tarantino fan, and I'd never seen any of them. I think I saw Django before we started dating, so that's it. And I was like, that movie is good, but it's like 2 hours too long. So his favorite is Jackie Brown, and I watched now. That is one of my favorite movies. But other than that,
I mean, I do like Kill Bill.
Yeah, I did watch bits and pieces when he was watching. That one's good. I was like, more girls. Those are better. But I did not. What is that one? Pulp Fiction. Don't get it.
No. But Mighty Ducks came out in October. Like, fucking Mighty Ducks. Oh, so good. And also a family favorite of ours is The Last of the Mohicans, came out in September of that year. Like, just again, I'm just like looking through, like finding like one in each month. Just so good. What's in August? Come on, there's got to be a good one in here. Three Ninjas? Are you kidding me? I was literally just tweeting about Three Ninjas.
I love the one where they go to Japan.
Oh yeah.
Oh, because Colt is just so cute.
Right. Well, I think that's also the second actor who plays Colt.
Yeah, he wasn't cute till they went to Japan.
and
Rocky's also pretty cute, but
right.
I always like Colt.
The summer blockbusters of 1992. So in July, we get A League of Their Own, which I can also quote the entire movie.
Whoa.
What an amazing film that is. And in that same month, we got Bebe's Kids, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Death Becomes Her.
Bebe's Kids. I always I grew up with a lot of white people, and I'm like, do you guys know what, like, my mom, she being white and Hispanic, I think she would just like show us black things to be like, look, you are black. And that was one of the movies. And I would go to school and nobody knew what that was. And I was like, you guys don't know Bebe's Kids? The two other black kids in the town knew what it was.
So again, I grew up in a white suburban town, and for whatever reason, even we watched Bebe's Kids a lot. Growing
Deer
up,
Park knew.
But again, Death Becomes Her. Oh, so good. This was also, I forgot, like, I'm looking through these. This was also back when all of the Disney movies, they'd re-release them in the theaters, and then like McDonald's would also have like the matching Happy Meals toys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, talk about marketing genius. Like, that's why, even though, like, all of those Disney movies were so old, that's why, like, they're all still, like, new, young, and fresh to us, because they again, had a literal chokehold on us, being like, here it is in the movie theater, now we're re-releasing it on video, and you get to collect all of these toys. Like,
yeah.
hello.
Like, my older brother, my mom was like, oh, we're going to go watch Oliver and Company in theaters because your older brother liked it. And I'm like, when the hell did this movie come out? But I loved it. Like, right. Give me more.
Right. And then in June, Batman Returns, which was also another, like, huge hit. Again, what a freaking good movie. Again, what small little queer child did not want to be Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman?
Oh, she was a crush on the show before, yeah, as a sexual awakening.
Right.
The whip.
Right. And also, like, have you seen the video of her doing that in one take?
Oh, no.
So the scene where she whips all the heads off the mannequins, she did that in her first take.
Icon.
I know. She and I share a birthday. Just FYI.
Like, I too am an icon.
Right. Sister Act also came out that year, which, Sister Act 2 has, in my opinion, the more iconic songs because of Lauryn Hill. But Sister Act was still such a good movie. I didn't know there was,
well, obviously it's called Sister Act 2, but I did not know there was a first when I was little, because I love the second one so much. I was like, there was one before this, but this one's perfection. But now we're getting a third.
Right. So in April of 1992, so I remember this and like being so sad about it. Fern Gully came out and I was obsessed and I wanted to go see it, but none of my siblings, even though April is my birth month, and so like for my birthday I want to see Fern Gully, because it came out in early April and my family decided that they were going to wait until it was my birthday, it had already left the theaters by my birthday, so I had to wait for it to come out on VHS. But also, even though it was not popular in the movie theater, another movie that came out that was then a huge success on VHS was Newsies, which I don't know if I can talk to a musical theater girl without mentioning like Newsies, and then being like, oh, the movie is so great, but the Broadway show is just so incredible. And I'm like, girl, Newsies isn't that great, but but live your life. Like, I'm not gonna yuck your yum.
Like, well, they have cute little hats, don't they?
Right. Cutting Edge is another movie that came out. What a freaking, like, like for me again, like watching all of these movies as a rental, like
That's a renter.
so good. So good. And also, oh, My Cousin Vinny, that's right, I forgot, in 1992. That was the year that Marissa Tomei won her Oscar for My Cousin Vinny. So good.
Well, are you ready for some popcorn questions?
Yes, please.
Right. You're just going to give me a number 1 through 50. We're going to do 5 of them.
Let's do 17.
Okay. This is a controversial one that I still see articles about today. Could Jack have fit on the floating door with Rose in Titanic?
There was literally like just someone shared some meme about that. Even James Cameron was like, he would have died. And so here's the thing. In my headcanon, I feel like Jack could have gotten up there, but it would have been more of a struggle, and she would have gotten like more wet than she already was. And I feel like that was like Jack's thing, was to like keep her out of the water as much as possible. That's just what I think. I'm sure that they potentially could have made it work, or they could have both end up drowning. It's whatever. Again, I also, to me, that's another sort of like me and my friends, when we watch movies together, we have a firm drinking rule that when you start questioning like something about the movie, just drink for trying to make sense. Like it happened because that is the way that it needed to happen for the story. So just let it go and enjoy the movie.
I mean, it made the movie. He had to die.
Right.
Also, there's that whole theory that he wasn't even real, that he was a time traveler. There you go.
People are wild.
I know. I love getting into, like, I would never want to talk to the people that come up with these, but I love reading them. I love reading their posts. So, what's your next number?
Let's do 47.
What was the superior Happy Meal toy in the 90s?
Okay, so so as a very huge connoisseur of the Happy Meal toys, one of my favorites of the 90s was the Batman Returns Catwoman car, because it was one of the first Catwoman action figures that I was ever allowed to have. Where when you drove her, the tail on the back of the car would like wag.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Frickin' live for that. But also, because like if we're just talking about like the entirety of the 90s, like there were so many. There's also the one that I literally just found at my parents' house and gave to my friend Dax as a present, which is the Storm from the X-Men, where she's in a tornado, and when you spin her wheels, like sparks light up inside the whirlwind.
I remember that one. Yes.
Like icon. Also, another like early toy that I was allowed to have because it came in the Happy Meal was when Batman the Animated Series came out, and I was lucky enough to get the Catwoman in that. So like, I mean, there were just so many. Like, to me, the truly iconic toys, and someone would need to fact check me as if they came out in the late 80s or early 90s, was when the Muppet Babies ones came out, because me and my brothers were like, we were going to collect them all. And it was like Kermit on a skateboard, and Gonzo on a tricycle, and Fozzie Bear on a rocking horse with wheels, and Miss Piggy had a little pink like car that she sat in. Like, that shit was iconic.
I love the ones from the Flintstones movie.
Oh.
Like, that was my jam, because you could build the whole city, and I don't think I ever collected like a whole set of McDonald's toys. We really tried hard, my family, for some reason, for the Inspector Gadget movie. We did not like the movie at all. We were not fans of it. We did not like Matthew Broderick. He wasn't a fan, but my mom was like, we are going to every single McDonald's. Later in life, I did get all the Chipmunks for the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie.
like when I tell you that my mom, because she has 4 kids, like she would be like, okay, she's like, for real, like which ones do you have back there? Because I need you to either make sure that all 4 of my kids have the exact same one, or you got to give me one of each.
So there's no fighting.
Yes.
And of course, I love the Barbies. Oh my God.
I was never allowed to get like when they started splitting it up between girl toy and boy toy, which always, of course, made me viciously angry. I was never allowed to get that's when I wouldn't get a kid's meal. I would then just get like a cheeseburger meal instead of a Happy Meal because I knew I couldn't get Barbie.
I wish that I still had them because they had such good ones. I miss it. Like there was this pretty like black Barbie and she had like a white dress and this like beautiful like plum top, I guess, and there was this beautiful detail in the white part of the dress. I loved it. Dang you, Mom, for making me toss all my stuff. Rude. What's your next number?
Let's keep with the 7s and go 37.
Okay, if Brandy and Monica wanted your heart, which one are you going for?
So I'm gonna go with Brandy because of I liked some of her later music. Like I definitely liked was it Full Moon? Was that her album? I love that one. And also like I mean she is Cinderella. Like she is Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella. Like I'm gonna have to go with Brandy. And also from the iconic, have you seen Jackie's Back?
No, I don't think so.
Starring Jennifer Lewis. First of all, okay, so you're gonna need to stop what you're doing. You're gonna need to go find a copy or see if you can find it on streaming. But it's called Jackie's Back, starring Jennifer Lewis, and it's a mockumentary of a singer who was like a child singer in the '60s into like her comeback in like I guess it was like the early 2000s.
Okay.
So when she's being interviewed, and they also get like real celebrities to like be themselves in it as well. Like Diane Carroll. Did they get Whitney Houston? I don't remember. But anyway, so there's this part where Jennifer Lewis, aka Jackie Washington. Also, when Jennifer Lewis just got her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, it was on Jackie Washington Day for the but they ask her like, oh, do you feel like you influenced, younger artists? And she was like, they've all stolen from me. All of the divas. Whitney, Mariah, Lil Brandy. And I don't know what it is about her saying Lil Brandy that frickin' kills me. And then the fact that like she and Brandy are now, I guess, like friends because, they did like that viral, I don't want nobody fucking with me in these streets. Anyway, I love Brandy, but also you should go see Jackie's Back. It's so good.
I just looked it up and it does look pretty amazing just from the cover.
So like most movies in that sort of like vein or whatever, like there's that weird, I would say, third, fourth of the movie that's like it just kind of drags and it's awkward, and then they just gotta like wrap it up or whatever. But also her assistant / daughter is named Entendre, simply for the one joke of her to go and make it a double entendre. It's hilarious.
They were like, they wrote that joke and they're like, how can we? Yes,
right, and
that's her
then
name.
her name is just Entendre.
What's your next number?
Let's do number 7.
Which teen show did you watch growing up and think, man, high school is going to be amazing if it's like that?
I mean, I guess either. The only high school shows that I should say there was like 3 high school shows shows that took place in high school. Number 1 was Saved by the Bell. Number 2 was 90210, and number 3 was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
3 very different high school experiences.
Yes, but also as someone who, again, queer child growing up in a small town, I also knew that high school wasn't going to be like that. Like I already knew that like things weren't going to be great for me. I still had a relatively good time in high school. Like I found my people, I got into theater and like had friends and stuff. But like, I don't know. I guess I don't think I ever watched those shows and was like, oh, this is what, I can't wait to go to prom because prom's going to be so amazing. Or like, I can't like wait to like run for class president or whatever. Like none of that. I don't remember any of those shows being like, oh, high school's going to be amazing. Cause like, I already knew that school wasn't the best for me.
You lived in a reality.
I mean,
I was like, the OC, I was like, when you turn 17, life just gets so much better. Like, you finally, the boy's gonna like you.
Oh.
17 came and went and nothing happened.
Like, I already had such a vivid, like, fantasy world because I was into, like, comic books and stuff that, like, the reality of, like, a high school was, like, that's not, like that was never, like, my fantasy. Like, all of my fantasies dealt with, like, traveling into, like, space or, like fighting supervillains and stuff.
All right, and your last popcorn question?
Well, round out with, did I already say 27?
No.
Okay, 27. I'm staying with all the sevens.
Okay, this is a Fuck, Marry, Kill 90s edition. Danny Tanner, Uncle Joey, and Uncle Jesse.
Oh. Okay, well, I'm gonna marry Uncle Jesse because, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna marry Jesse. No. Fuck Joey, because no thanks. Yeah, marry Uncle Jesse, and I'll fuck Danny Tanner.
I would marry Danny. As I gotten older, he was more attractive now that I'm older.
So like, I get that because also he's the one with, like, the stable job and, like, responsible and all of that stuff. So, like, I get that, and I understand. But it's also like, Jesse eventually got his shit together, and he's still hot and still has that hair.
That was like, even as a kid, I was like, I want to do things with Uncle Jesse.
Right? You're like, Uncle Jesse is just doing something.
You're like, God dang, those girls get to be with Uncle Jesse all day. Oh, and I hated Aunt Becky. I was so jealous of her.
Right.
It's like, curse you. So, before we wrap up, if you were the age you are now in 1992, what do you think you'd be doing?
Girl, you took me to a dark place, so I'm not going to answer that way. Because I was like, let's face it, if I was my age now in 1992, I'd probably be dead.
My husband said the same, like, kind of thing.
Right, like, I mean, in all reality. But we're living in fantasy. I mean, I don't know. Like, I would probably be like a teacher. Probably like a theater teacher at, like, a high school or something. Like, I probably would have, like, gone that route, and been, like, an educator, probably, because, yeah. Would
you be going and seeing Madonna live?
Oh, first of all, you already know that I would have already seen the Blonde Ambition tour. I definitely would be going to see the Girly Show, which is her tour that would be coming up to support Erotica. Like, absolutely I would be.
Taking those teacher funds and going to the show.
Right.
Well, before we go, can you remind us where we can find you online?
Absolutely. You can find me across all social media platforms at Demanda Martini, DMANDAMARTINI.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk to me about everything 1992. And everyone, you can find all of Demanda's information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it.